Hi, and welcome to Why Do Countries Exist? Today, I'll talk about the political parties in Australia and kind of what each party stands for and its role in Australian politics. I'll talk about all the parties that are currently represented in the Australian Parliament, which is made up of the House of Representatives and the Senate. For some of the other smaller but still relevant parties represented in state politics, I might make a second episode talking about those, if there is any interest. So before we start talking about parties, I'll briefly explain the difference between the House of Representatives and the Senate. So the House of Representatives is the lower house, and this house will introduce legislature, and once it has been passed through the House, it will be given to the Senate. The House also will elect the Prime Minister, so long as they have a working majority. While the government coalition doesn't need a majority in the Senate, it is important that they are still able to pass bills through the Senate most of the time, as the Senate has the ability to reject all bills coming from the House. Both houses also have different means of getting members elected. In the House, members are elected from single-member constituencies. Each constituency is supposed to have a roughly equal population inside of them, with the House of Representatives supposed to be representative of the population. Crazy how that works. States and territories will have more constituencies if they have a larger population. So, New South Wales has 47 constituencies, while the Northern Territory only has 2 constituencies. There are in total 151 of these constituencies. The Senate, on the other hand, is equal across all the states. Each state elects 12 members to the Senate. These members, unlike the House, are voted in proportionally. So, for example, if Party A wins 30% of the votes in a state, they will win 30% of the seats in that state. This makes the Senate hold more parties and be more proportional towards Australian voting habits, which can often lead the Senate to having a smaller government and opposition bloc. The territories also should be noted don't elect 12 members to the Senate, but instead 2. So now, on with the parties. First we'll look at the parties in the House. Also, I feel at this point, in case you couldn't already tell, I am not Australian, and I have no ties there. I'm sure this will come as a big shock to many of you with my very, very thick Australian accent. But I will try my best to explain the parties of this country, even though I don't live there. The government, as of recording this episode, is made up of what is known as the Coalition, a group of anti-Labour, centre-right parties. The largest of these parties is the Liberal Party, with 44 seats in the House. The Liberal Party is seen as the head of the coalition, with the current Prime Minister Scott Morrison a member of the Liberals. The Liberals are based throughout Australia, with the exception of Queensland and the Northern Territory. They mainly perform well in suburban areas and some urban areas. They can be defined as conservative and liberal conservative. The Liberals are very focused on promoting the free market and reducing taxes. On their website, they talk about reducing taxes, backing small businesses, and opposing increased social spending. The party is also hostile towards unions, supports ensuring Australia's military remains well funded, along with support for stronger border security. The party has a mixed social message. The Liberals are backed by both more socially conservative elements and more moderate classical liberal and central elements. So depending on who you ask, its position socially will vary. And finally, there's also a divide on keeping the monarchy in Australia, or turning Australia into a republic within the party, although it remains on the back burner for most Liberal candidates. I'm going to quickly skip the second biggest party in the coalition and talk about the third biggest, the National Party. The National Party has 10 seats in the House and, like the Liberals, can be considered conservative. However, the Nationals primarily operate in the countryside, away from the major population centres. It has its strongest support in New South Wales and Victoria, although it's also present in Western Australia. It is currently led by Michael McCormack, the Deputy Prime Minister of Australia and MP from New South Wales. Policy-wise, the party is very similar to the Liberals. They are both anti-Labour and anti-union. They are generally supportive of the free market, and they both have very similar talking points on their website. However, the main difference between the two is that the Nationals are more supportive of propping up rural industries. They tend to support government subsidies of these industries, and are more in favour of protectionist trade policies to protect Australian products. They also tend to be slightly more socially conservative. So now going back to the second largest party in the coalition, we have the Liberal National Party of Queensland. The party is based in Queensland, has 23 seats in the House, and was formed from a merger of the state Liberal and National Party. This was done mainly because of electoral laws in the state that favoured the Labour Party. The coalition in Queensland in 2008 decided to form one party to ensure the coalition could have a chance of surviving and winning a majority in Queensland. The party is currently led by Deb Frecklington, a member of Queensland's state parliament. The party holds similar policies to both the Liberals and Nationals, although socially they seem to be further to the right and more interested in agrarian interests. Finally, we have the smallest party in the coalition, and this party doesn't actually have any seats in the House, but it's just easier if I talk about them right now. The County Liberal Party is similar to the Liberal National Party. It is a merger of the Liberal and National Party and based in the Northern Territory. The party is led by Leah Finocchiaro, a member of the Northern Territory's parliament. Again, it has very similar policies to the rest of the coalition, although interestingly enough, on their website they did talk about Aboriginal issues, and they want to invest more resources in that community, along with reforming the justice system to better suit their needs. They also have talked about moving the Northern Territory into becoming its own state, meaning greater representation in the Senate. So now that we are done with the government, we can go to the opposition, with the Labour Party filling in that role. The Labour Party is the largest party in the House, with 68 seats. The Labour Party can be seen as the main left-wing party of the country, and is mainly popular in the urban areas among working-class Australians and progressives. Labour is ideologically divided into two main factions, Labour Left and Labour Right. These factions represent, unsurprisingly, the left and more progressive, and the right more centrist wing of the party. These two factions will compete for seats and who will fill the leadership positions in the party, and tend to be supported by different sets of Labour supporters and trade unions. Labour is the one party that is present in every state and territory. It is led by Anthony Albanese, the former Deputy Prime Minister of Australia, and MP from New South Wales. The Labour Party on the whole tends to support greater state intervention in the economy, and wants to protect and expand the social welfare system in the country. Labour has historically been considered socialist, and today are considered generally more social democratic, supporting broad centre-left policies. You typically see Labour candidates supporting greater funds into education, the healthcare system, and social security. You'll also see policies supportive of progressive social policies and strong opposition to racism in Australia, along with dislike towards nuclear power, support for greater environmental regulations, and support for turning Australia into a republic. So we finish with the main parties of Australia, and we'll go to the smaller third parties. We'll start off with the Australian Greens, the largest third party in the country, although they only have one seat in the House. They hold some power in every state parliament and the Australian Capital Territory. The Greens support green politics, which means a belief in grassroots democracy, social justice, non-violence, and perhaps most famously, sustainability and environmentalism. Green supporters tend to view environmental issues as one of, if not the most important issue, so environmental issues often become the focus of Green candidate campaigns. Green supporters also tend to be young, college-educated, and often left-leaning. The Greens are currently led by Adam Bandit, a federal MP from Victoria. The Australian Greens support protecting endangered species and general animal welfare. They oppose fracking and nuclear energy, want to reduce waste and the carbon footprint of Australia, and want to move towards renewable energy. They also want to crack down on political corruption and ban political donations from powerful industries. They want to move towards more public housing, support increased social welfare, want to increase corporate taxes, and promote progressive social policies, multiculturalism, and Aboriginal land rights. Next, we go to Cater's Australian Party. This party is largely based around the ideas of their single federal MP from Queensland, Bob Kater. Kater was formerly a member of the National Party until he became an independent MP and formed his own political party in 2011. Although Bob Kater is probably the most famous member of the party, since 2020 the party has been led by his son and member of Queensland Parliament, Robbie Kater. The party is based solely in Queensland, and gets most votes in the northern part of the state. The party, like Kater itself, can be described as conservative and Australian nationalist. You'll see this in support of Australian veterans, opposition towards same-sex marriage, support for gun rights, and opposition towards increased immigration into Australia. However, to say the party is simply right-wing would be wrong. Kater has historically been a strong proponent of nationalizing the economy, and general greater government involvement in the economy. You'll also see the party supporting a switch to more ethanol-based energy, greater access to water for rural Queensland, more government spending on Australian products, and protecting Aboriginal land rights. The final party present in the House is the Centre Alliance, with one seat in the House. The Centre Alliance is based in South Australia, and was formerly based around Nick Xenophon, a former senator from South Australia. Today the party operates in a kind of strange state, since in 2018 Xenophon had left the party, and even on the website the first thing it takes you to is a series of Q&As stating that the party still in fact exists and operates. The party seemingly receives most of its votes around the city and capital of South Australia, Adelaide. The party seems to be led by a senator from South Australia, Sterling Griff. The Centre Alliance is unsurprisingly a centrist party, although it can also be described as social liberal and regionalist. It advocates for increased transparency in politics and anti-corruption policies, opposition towards radicalism, progressive social policies, opposition to gambling, increased environmental regulations, and increased government spending in the economy, particularly agriculture. So we are done with the parties in the House, and we will now move on to the Senate. We have a much larger crossbench and smaller government and opposition. I'll first go over all the parties we have already talked about. In government, there's 27 Liberal, 6 Liberal National, 2 Nationals, and 1 County Liberal senator. In the opposition, there is 26 Labour senators. Finally, in the crossbench, you have 9 Green senators, 1 Centre Alliance senator, along with 1 independent senator. With 2 senators is one of Australia's largest hard-right parties, Paulina Hanson's One Nation Party. This party is based around current senator from Queensland, Paulina Hanson, who acts as the party's president. Hanson has been a controversial figure in Australian politics, and her party is very much seen with either great disdain by those who oppose it, or great enthusiasm to those who back Hanson's policies. The party sees the strongest support in Queensland, New South Wales, and Western Australia. The party supporters very often tend to be a combination of white Australians, older Australians, and social conservatives. One Nation can be defined as an Australian nationalist and right-wing populist party. It supports strongly reducing immigration into the country, in particular immigration from Indonesia and other Muslim-majority countries. It has also stated opposition towards increased environmental regulations, and on its website, it seems to argue that man-made climate change is a hoax, or at the very least exaggerated. One Nation also supports protectionist trade policies and is opposed to globalism, is supportive of traditional Australian values, along with strong support for the nuclear family, and wants to increase pensions. It's also hard to talk about One Nation without mentioning the allegations of racism. Hanson first became famous in Australia over comments toward the Aboriginal population, and has been accused of racism in her comments towards the Asian community. All of this has been denied by Hanson and her supporters, who tend to view this as just a smear campaign. Finally, we have the Jackie Lambie Network. This party is a political vehicle for Jackie Lambie, a senator from Tasmania. Lambie is seen as another Australian nationalist and populist. She's supportive of increased spending to help Australian veterans, and has supported anti-corruption measures. Lambie formerly has been noted for her anti-Islamist views, and saying the Greens and ISIS has similar ideologies, although she's recently distanced herself from these views. Lambie has also been supportive of Auto-Turkey, or an economy with little foreign dependence, has opposed Chinese political influence in Australia and the Pacific, and has been supportive of the death penalty. So those are the federal political parties of Australia. I think if you wanted the 5-second version of this video, you could summarize the parties like this. The coalition parties are centre-right conservative, Labour is centre-left, there's the Greens who want more environmental regulation, along with many other smaller parties, all based around a politician and their brand of politics. There are many more parties in the states and territories, so maybe I'll make a part 2 explaining those parties. I'll probably take a week off to do research and writing for Austria, and then next week I'll release an episode on the history of some of Australia's external territories. Hopefully after that, Austria will be ready, but for now, thank you for listening. I hope you have a good day. I hope we did a good job explaining Australian politics. My email is whydocountriesexist@gmail.com for if you want to send your thoughts, comments, suggestions, or hate mail. Thank you. Take care.